Ever since Staccato 2011, formerly known as STI International, announced the CS back several months ago. I've been anxious to get my hands on it. I do want to thank my friend Molly for loaning me hers to take a quick look at. And is this going to replace anything I own? Well, again, I don't own this one, but we'll see where it goes. Stay with me. My daily carry gun, for the most part, has been the Staccato C, which unfortunately they no longer make. I tried carrying the C2 for a while. I had a couple issues with that. I've got videos on both of these at various times. You can go back in the playlist or back in the archives and find those. They're both there. But the CS is supposedly an improvement over the C2 and in many ways better than the C. We are going to take a look just to find out. So some features on the CS. This is compact. This is a 3.5-inch barrel, whereas the original C was 3.9. The C2 was also a 3.9-inch barrel. And this is a 16-round gun. As you can see, by the way, it is empty right now. Nothing in the magazine. And the C2 was also a 16-round gun. But differences, and as long as I got the magazines out, let's start with those. The 16-round magazine for the CS is notably thinner than the 16-round magazine for the C2. Both 16 rounds, but noticeably different in thickness, yet same capacity. These are supposedly proprietary mags, obviously, and so were these. Not sure yet what the mags are going to cost. I know the replacements here were about $50 for that, or $100 if you want to get something fancier. Whereas the original C was strictly an 8-round single stack using standard officer size 1911 9mm magazines. Before we actually get into more differences on the gun, let's take a look at how it came. This came in a nice soft case that is a little departure from the other cases I've had. There's a pouch here, there's a pouch on this side, and magazine storage on this side. Whereas the old pouches, or the old carrying case, a little bit different on the outside. Obviously this is for the C2. And this just came with a couple of Velcro straps to hold the pistol in, and a magazine carrier on this side for elastic, and one zipper pouch on the outside. So I think the new case is probably a little more versatile, although that's just a matter of opinion. All right, specific differences. I want to compare this specifically with the C2. I wanted to like the C2, and for many people, they really do like it. For my method of carry, which is behind the right hip at about 330 position, I don't carry appendix inside the waistband. Not a lot of people do. I'm not going to criticize it. Just does not work for me. And for AIWB, the C2 probably worked out just fine, but for me, not so much where I carry it. Complaint I had originally about the large grip and the fact that this just did not, for me, hide well with the 16-round magazine end. This is smaller. We talk about grip size, and size does matter here. The C2 finds itself pretty much in the middle between the CS finds itself pretty much in the middle between the C and the C2. The grip circumference was one of the issues that I had. Again, it just didn't feel right on the C2. Again, a little too big. I got a medium-sized hand, and the CS slots in at about 3/8 of an inch larger round than the regular C, and about a 1/16 of an inch smaller, but it feels smaller than that. Smaller. We're talking measurements up here by the grip safety area. If we get down to the base, there's a bigger difference there. It's the CS is about 1/4 of an inch bigger round than the C, and about 1/4 of an inch smaller round right here than the C2. So again, it slots kind of between those two and does work well for me. So the weights are a little different also. The CS, again, slots in pretty much in the middle with 16 rounds plus 1, so 17 total, and a magazine of 147 grain Golden Saber hollow points. The CS comes in at 36 ounces. Same ammunition for the C2. It comes in at 39 ounces. Take away a whole bunch of those rounds and have 8 plus 1 for the C, and you get 33. So again, these are all optics equipped, and slight difference. This has the smaller optic. This is the Swamp Fox Sentinel. Both of these have the Leupold Delta Point Pro, and we'll talk more about optics here in just a minute. I also didn't like on the C2, just a real smooth magazine release. I didn't like on the C smooth magazine release. It's a little harder to get to. So they did improve that on the C2 and over the C at least. And further improvement on the CS, it does protrude enough to easily get my hand on it without having to change my grip, and it now has serrations on it, which make it a little less likely to slip in the hand. Alright, so forget the C for now. They don't make it anymore, even though it's still my favorite carry gun, but let's look more at the gun itself. Again, 3.5-inch bull barrel. Stainless bull barrel. It is fluted and slightly different texture, or at least a pattern on the side of the CS. 3.9-inch bull barrel, not fluted. Just a stainless steel barrel, nothing fancy on the C2. Same basic forward and rear cocking serrations. Those work well. They're both cut for optics, and as was the C. And here's where it gets a little interesting. You can get these for different optics plates for either of these guns, and so they're the same going to be between the two of them. You can get them for the RMR or Delta Point Pro. You can get them for the Holosun, a couple of different Holosuns. You get them for the EOTech's EFLX, also the Aimpoint Acro. And here's where some of the price difference comes in, and that's why I mounted the Delta Point Pro on mine, and possibly why Molly mounted it on hers, because the set for the Delta Point Pro is $50 for the optic set for this, which consists of a rear sight that does dovetail into the optic itself. A little different way of doing it between the what Molly has on hers and what I had on mine for original, but it also just has 2 alignment lugs, and it fits right into the optic cut without having to worry about putting on a plate. Everything else is going to take a plate that's going to run anywhere from about $125 to $160, depending on which plate. And they don't come with the gun. You got to figure out how you want the gun to be shipped to you. One other major difference in looking at them, you'll see that the CS has a straight trigger, no serrations on the front. That's an option. I think it's about a $50 or some odd dollar option on this, whereas the C2 has a texture on the front of a curved trigger. That is a plastic face. I'm not sure if it's plastic on the CS or not. Feels like it could be aluminum, but don't quote me on that. The CS, by the way, is not adjustable for over travel. The C2 is adjustable for over travel. Again, plastic face on it. I did mention this has a straight trigger. I do want to talk briefly about trigger pull. This is typical Staccato in that there is a little bit of take-up. Probably there is actually more than what I get on my C2, and about the same as I get on my C. So just a little bit of take-up, and maybe that has something to do with the fact it's a straight trigger, no over travel stop. It does have a nice short, clean, crisp pull-through, as I would expect again. And a typical Staccato, this comes out just under 3 pounds when I average 5 pulls. And there's no creep. It's just an on-off. Well, take it back. There's just a little bit of a creep there, but not much. And again, this is a new gun without a lot of rounds to it yet. Virtually no over travel, even though there is no over travel stop on the CS. There's just a little glitch right there, and that's it, and then it goes, and I do like it. So, do I like it better than the trigger on my C2? I like the straight trigger. I definitely like the straight trigger. And a little better feel on the C2, but again, this has a couple thousand rounds to it, and then certainly when I compare it with the C, got a lot of ammo through this, and the trigger on this is a little crisper and cleaner, but they all come in right around 3 pounds, as I would expect out of a Staccato. Both of those slot into a hybrid frame that's partially aluminum and partially polymer. Grip texture is totally different. Staccato has changed the grip texture several times. This was even changed on the C from the original C that I had that wasn't optics ready. Went to a more aggressive proprietary pattern here. This is more that you'd get from a sandpaper type. Still good grip surface, and obviously works well for me. Still has the Staccato logo in it. The slide stop lever is a little bit more flush on the, it's actually just slightly recessed, but there's still top sticks out a little bit, but there's a recess for the slide stop lever on the CS. There is not on the C2. On the flip side, it's got a slight recess around the axle for the slide stop lever, and that is flush with the frame, whereas on the C2 it does protrude from the frame on the right side. Not a huge deal. Fiber optic front sight, both guns. Dawson proprietary rear sight on the back, and of course these are on the Delta Point Pro. Ambidextrous safeties, not ambidextrous mag release or slide stop lever. Safety levers are very similar. It looks like the grooves on the safety on the CS just a little bit wider than they are on the C2. Not a big deal. Same type of hammer, same good fitting on the rear. But when you look at the rear, you'll see where the C2 has the original 1911 style internal extractor, and very, very nicely fitted, by the way, whereas the C2 has an external extractor. Little departure from the norm for Staccato. The beaver tails look similar initially, but when you look at the grip safety at the top, the C2 has a different contour than the CS. I don't notice any difference in handling and shooting. They both fit my hand just as well. I'm not getting any unusual feelings from them. Backstrap is also, or the mainspring housing is where one of my complaints were on the original C2. It's just a very slight rounding, hardly any, but it doesn't seem to fit my hand quite as well. I complained about that a little bit more rounding, not much, just a little bit, but on a smaller grip on the CS, that, by the way, is shorter. When you put these side by side, the C2 on the right, the CS on the left, you can see there is just a little bit of difference, even though they have the same capacity. Side by side, obviously, with the CS on the top, C2 on the bottom, there's again a little difference in size, as you would expect for a barrel that's 4/10 of an inch shorter. Magwell on the C2 is fairly pronounced, built right into the grip. It's a little bit less of a magwell, but not much. On the CS, it does hide just a little bit better. It's got a smaller lip on the bottom, and again, all of that does help somewhat in concealment, not so much the bottom, but it does on the top. There are finger grooves on the magazine if you ever get a double feed where you have to strip the magazine by getting a good grip on it. You can do it easier on the CS than you could on the C2. Again, bigger magazines on that, even the same capacity. So, whole lot of differences between the two. Is this going to be a good carry gun? I've got a few rounds through it. I'm not going to show the shooting yet in this video. We're going to save that once I get some more time through the gun. So far, it has run flawlessly. My C2 has run a couple of thousand rounds at this point without any failure. My carry gun has run several thousand rounds without one single failure of any kind of ammunition. I do really still like my C. So could this replace it? Well, that's yet to be seen. It's interesting that the CS, being a smaller gun, is about $200 less expensive than the C2. Same capacity, smaller, lighter, allegedly easier to shoot, and has the Dawson toolless recoil system as opposed to just the recoil master system in the C2. Both are railed, both will take lights on them. A lot of good features, a slight contour in the front of the slide. Again, it's a carry type gun, so I expect a little bit of melting on it. No sharp edges on it. Yeah, it has possibilities right now. I'm anxious to put this up against a couple other guns that are similar, but so far, from what I've seen and what I've felt in the few rounds I put through this CS, it is an interesting innovation from Staccato 2011. So there's my initial look at the Staccato CS. We're going to get it out to the range more and do some range footage and some follow-up on it in the near future. Thanks for staying with me while we took a look at the Staccato CS.